Hey, so you may have just gotten a little notification that we are getting started and we'll be recording today's workshop. Welcome, everybody. I'm Joanna Siebert. I'm the Associate Director of the Mike and Renee Child Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and we have a wonderful workshop planned for you today. I'm going to start sharing my slides, and we encourage you to be very interactive with us. If it's convenient for you to throw questions in chat as we move forward, please do that. We will definitely have a Q&A session towards the end. And so we want to encourage you to be able to participate in that. So as I said, I'm going to share my slides in just a second here. All right. You should be able to see the cover slide for today's workshop, which is called The Pitch, Telling Your Story. Give me a thumbs up if you're able to see it. And in fact, we'd love for you to share in chat your name and what brings you to this session today, just to say hello to everybody as we get started. I'm sure we'll have additional people joining us as we move forward. So the session will be recorded and we will post it on our website. I want to introduce our esteemed guest speaker today, Vanessa Errecarte, who is a wonderful lecturer at the Graduate School of Management, which we have a great relationship with. And she's also the CEO of Marketing Simplified, which is an award-winning company. And she just brings really wonderful expertise. So in a minute, I'll give her a chance to say hello to all of you. I'm Joanna Siebert. As I mentioned, I'm the Associate Director at the Institute, and want to give a big shout out to Angela Lindley, who had planned to be here with all of you today presenting. She's our Communications Manager at the Institute, but unfortunately she's sick today. So we are working together as a team. You might see Nikki Peterson on the workshop session, helping to answer questions, Lindsay Lowry, Jasmine is here too. I'm not sure if Kara is here, but we're all here working together to provide a great experience and hopefully bring you some interesting information today. So our agenda, we're going to go through this in sort of three sections. So Vanessa is going to present first on customer-centric branding. And then I'm going to talk about how you might go about crafting an effective pitch and visual elements. And specifically, we will talk about our Little Bang competition and our Big Bang competition that are coming up. But this information is relevant in many different ways. So it's a great opportunity to hear some different perspectives and advice. And then we will leave plenty of time so that we can have some questions from you and engage in more discussion as we go forward. All right, so here's the overview. As I mentioned, we have Little Bang coming up. It's actually next Thursday. So if you haven't been able to register because it's now closed, we got a record number of people who are interested in competing in that competition this year. We hope that you can join us next Thursday in Gallagher Hall. That information is on our website, and Nikki will provide that throughout the workshop session, so you can go and register for the event itself to come and cheer on other people who are practicing their pitches. We always like to encourage that. And then we have our upcoming Big Bang Business Competition, which has several elements that involve pitching and visual communication. So we'll talk about that. But as I mentioned, you can use an effective pitch to tell your story when you're recruiting a co-founder, team members, presenting to investors, competing in other competitions. Plasma is really popular through the Student Startup Center, and we like to support all of our different entrepreneurs across campus and beyond. So again, you should hear some things that can be useful no matter how you'd like to use it. So these are just some of our learning objectives for what you should be able to gain today as we go through it. As I mentioned, Vanessa is really going to take you through using her background in marketing and teaching these really important principles about how to create a customer-centric brand. And I will be talking about how to turn that into a compelling pitch and visuals that meet the requirements of competitions, but can also be used elsewhere. So with that, I'd like to introduce Vanessa to just say hello to everybody and kick off this section. As we mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us, please feel free to throw questions into the chat. We'll probably wait a while before we start taking those questions, but we will be able to keep track of them, and Vanessa will be able to see them. All right,
okay.
Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, and welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here and chat with you about a subject really near and dear to my heart. And so, as Joanna said, she's going to talk after I speak about positioning, she's going to talk about, applying these concepts. But one thing that I think is so important in 2025 is really knowing your customer and the transformation that that customer stands to receive from you, because messaging can be so powerful. So I wanted to show you a fun little video to start so you can see how powerful messaging can be.
And Vanessa, you may need to share that video, or we might need to come back to it because I'm not sure if it was embedded. Should I try?
Oh, okay.
Because we have slides. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. So basically, if you are familiar with the brand Liquid Death, it is just water, just water. And their whole marketing theme is don't be scared, it's just water. But the reason why they branded it as such is the founder said, I want to be more environmentally conscious about water bottles. And he was at a Vans Warped Tour gathering in 2009. And he started refilling his energy drink cans with water as he got thirsty. And he had this idea to launch a brand. But the product, again, is just water, and it's just the packaging that changed, right? But what's the transformation? So if you find a Liquid Death commercial, you'll see, as this video had in it, they market a lot to that you see kids having fun drinking this water because it makes them feel cool, right? So this whole secondary market emerged of parents buying this for kids' lunches because instead of now juices or sodas, they wanted to drink water because it was so cool to drink water and people to ask them about the can. And of course, then adults drinking water out of these cans were being more environmentally sound. And that meant a lot to a lot of people. And so Liquid Death really repositioned themselves in the water market just based on marketing, because you can't really change water in too many ways. Sure, they've gone and added sparkling water and flavored water. But again, they launched with just this canned mineral water to start. So we can go to the next slide now. So when we can tell a brand story like that, that's memorable and that positions us well, we also automatically remember it in our brains a lot better. And for a pitch competition, this is incredibly important, right? We want to be memorable, and we want our brands to be sticky, which means we think about them for a long time after we hear about them. So can anyone tell me who won the individual all-around women's gymnastics gold medal in the 2021 Summer Olympics? Does anyone remember? Go ahead and type it in the chat if you remember. No Googling, just go by memory. All right, Simone Biles. Let's go to the next slide. Here we have Simone Biles in 2021. Let's go to the next slide. It was not her. It was actually Sinisa Lee. Simone Biles in 2021 actually dropped out of the Olympics because she was under a lot of pressure and anxiety and had what she called the twisties, which is something that can happen to gymnasts where they lose their position in space due to stress, and it can be very dangerous to compete. And Simone Biles was very brave to take a stand and memorable, as Olga knows. And so we remember who she is, right? And so again, that's how powerful stories are. So how do you get to the point where you have a customer-centric brand so that you can position yourself in unique ways like Liquid Death did and be so memorable like Simone Biles is? Well, storytelling is part of it, but first we need to position those stories, because stories are often the only company assets that can't be copied. So they're very powerful. And especially if you can position your brand with a story that resonates with your customers, you're ahead of the game. Go ahead to the next slide. So our big challenge is when we're in this pitch competition, we have to get past the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system is something in our brain that protects us. It's a bundle of nerves in the base of our brain. So when you hear a baby cry down the hall, but you're ignoring the commercial in front of you, that's your reticular activating system saying, Here's what you need to pay attention to. And it's only gotten better at this over the years because we're cluttered with so much information. So how do we make information task dependent, or in other words, something our customers want? Next slide. Well, first we have to think about our product and our offer as two different parts of the customer journey. So there's a reason when you go to the car dealership that all the little specs of your car are folded up tiny in a little window sticker on the front windshield. And that's because we don't so much care about the product as consumers. We care about the offer that the product is giving us. So when we're going to go and buy something or think about buying something, we want our ideal customer to do something very scary. We want them to take a step out onto this tightrope that scares them, right? And make it across and make a conversion with us, okay? If we were to symbolize this. And our offer or our promise to them is what gets them across the tightrope. The product is simply the safety net. So I'm going to explain something that meant a lot to my family a few years ago. So my grandma is now 100 years old and she still lives all alone. And when she was 95, she broke her femur vacuuming. Now my grandma is 100 years old and she is never going to give up on the fact that she wants to vacuum her house every day. When you're 100 years old, you get to do what you want to do, right? But my mother and her siblings were beside themselves because after she broke her femur and recovered, she did not want to go into assisted living. She still wanted to live independently, but they were worried about her doing these household things. And so one thing they did to alleviate their fears was they bought her a Roomba. They did not care how the Roomba floated around the ground to pick up whatever was on the floor. They just cared that my grandma had independence that she wanted, and they had the peace of mind that they wanted. That was their offer. All of the specs that supported that were on the box of the Roomba, and that was the safety net for them to decide to buy the Roomba. But the offer and the product were quite different. When you're telling a story, you are illustrating the customer journey to achieving their offer, right? So the customer of whatever it is you're pitching wants to achieve something, and they're going through trials and tribulations and to achieve that. But in the end, they're achieving that offer, and the product is woven into that story smartly with stats and specs, etc. And Joanna's going to get more into that later. Next slide. Now, when we start thinking in terms of offers versus product, we start thinking about things like values, right? And so when we look at brands that are completely different, like soda and ride shares, we can start tying together brands that maybe are first movers, reliable, or maybe are more underdogs, right? We start to really think about the values and the stories of those brands and associate them. And so when you think in values, you have more freedom to kind of move your product places and put brand associations in people's minds, which makes you more memorable. Next slide. And so often we think this is all to kind of say that the American Marketing Association defines a brand as a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good service as distinct from those other sellers. Well, that leaves out such an important thing that I've just covered, which is those brand values, those customer aspirations. Because really in 2025, there's so many brands that have similar features. Things are so easily copied. We need to elevate our branding to be memorable and really tie in that customer transformation. And so I like to think of a brand as we go and think about what stories we want to tell as a need, desire, or aspiration among the ideal customer. So again, what are you trying to achieve in the end? I think Joe D'Annunzio says it well when he says, it's the customer, stupid. And then that allows us to take things further. So when we position a brand based on features, we lose so much control. Then we talk about ingredients, origins, specs, and parts. And it's very easy for people to say, oop, my ingredient's better, and to beat you out of the market, right? But then when we go to benefit positioning, it gets better. And we talk about things like physical feelings, like, oh, this tastes good. But if something starts tasting better, Again, you've been beat out of the market. So really, what is that value? Like for my grandma living independently, what is the value that your product or service is going to bring to the people, the consumers who need it? Because that's why you started this business. That's why you had this idea. That's what you're pitching. You're pitching that value, that change to the consumer and to the world that you're bringing. Okay. So when you think about your story, think about topics based on that. And it will elevate your storytelling to another level. Next slide. So we can do this with even the simplest products to get our brains going. So up here on the upper left, I have a Dyson Airwrap, which is a hair blow dryer that costs near $500. Why would anyone pay for that? Well, the feature is that it's ion technology, dries your hair in half the time with a smooth look and feel. Okay, so ion technology is a feature, smooth look and feel is a benefit. It also is low volume as far as having it next to your ears and lightweight. That's another, those are more features and benefits. But the transformation and why I have to embarrassingly admit that I spent that kind of money on a hair blow dryer is that I get to have more time in the mornings to help get my kids ready and to say bye to them and to have some time with them because I'm not spending as much time on my hair or my daughter's hair. Also, it's kind of nice that it doesn't like make my ears ring every time I use it, right? And that constitutes health. But really, why I bought it is I want extra time. I don't want to spend so much time on my hair. And that extra time to me means meaning and connection with my family. Stuffed crust pizza, or things like we deliver your pizza in a half hour, it's free. Well, other people can stuff their crust and other people can try to deliver pizza in a half hour. But if you're talking about the experiences shared over a piece of pizza and why you strove to make the best pizza because of an experience you had over pizza or a founder story like that, that is a good reason to buy pizza. And people aspire to buy pizza and have those experiences. Same thing with delivering your pizza in under a half hour, it's free. Really, that value that you're touting is that the customer deserves respect. So how can you infuse that into your story and messaging and talk about that time that you just had cold pizza on top of a really bad day and you deserve more respect, and so you were going to launch this business that always delivered hot. So again, we can take the simplest things and speak in this way. We just have to think about it, and we have to think about it in terms of for every feature or benefit that you talk about when it comes to your product or service, what transformation is your customer really seeking? Okay, next slide. So how do we figure that out? Well, there's a few ways. We can go to the next slide. First, I love the ideal customer interview. You've learned about this or will learn about this in your journey in the Big Bang, Little Bang. I have a list of questions that I ask from a branding perspective when I do those, but I know that there's a different template for this. So I put the questions I ask on the slides just to have a reference for you. But again, you're going to follow what Joanna says for the questions. Focus groups also work, but be careful. A lot of times people try to gain consensus. We don't like cognitive dissonance as humans. So when you have a few users in a group, really make sure you're teasing out people's opinions and that people aren't just agreeing to be nice, which is why the ideal customer interview works so well because it's one-on-one. And then surveys mainly confirm what we get from ideal customer interviews and focus groups. They're very general. So if you have limited time, I would always recommend the ideal customer interview. And then social listening. We can use tools to see what our customers are saying about us online. You don't have the liberty to do this if you haven't launched yet, but someday it's a good strategy to keep in mind so that you can continue to R&D your product and services. Next slide. So these interview questions are way more in depth than you're going to go. But one thing that I always do when I interview ideal customers is I just try to get to know things about them, like about their lives and their families, so that I can speak directly to their transformations that they seek. And you'll get some of that in your template as well. So there's a few pages of these. And the last page are questions about your business. So I like to get to know the customer first, their wants, needs, and desires. And then I like to talk up to them in regard to the business that I'm working with and what they want from them, why they bought from them, why they almost didn't buy from them. Again, these are just as an FYI for some time in the future that you might want them. All right, next slide. And then, of course, when we learn stuff from our ideal customers, we want to create an avatar. I think every company should have an ideal customer avatar. And these next few slides are just a template of how to make them. Of here's my ideal customer, Jane Doe. Here's what she really cares about. Here's her demographics, psychographics, etc. So that every time you're thinking of doing any type of messaging, you you have this vision of this person who you're speaking to go off of, so you can create those stories that set your product apart. So for example, if you're speaking to my mother about the Roomba, you're talking about the freedom that it can give someone who may not be as mobile, right? All right, next slide. Okay. And then once you really know your ideal customer, it really drives your brand position. Sometimes we, or most of the time, if we do it right, we really R&D our brands based on our ideal customers. And so you all started your business or have your idea because you have a customer problem that you seek to solve. So once you really know your customer, it helps you make a brand statement that basically is, I do what for who. Why do I do it? What value does it provide? And who is my competitive set? And so I always say, if you make a brand statement like that, answering those 4 questions in a sentence, if possible, you kind of have this North Star every time you go to tell a story to remind yourself of who you are and to keep your storytelling on track. Storytelling is fun and creative, so sometimes it can get a little off track, and we want to make sure to keep it on track. Next slide. So here it is simplified. Oh, and if you can go back to that slide really quick, Joanna. And once you really make a solid statement like this, you can even simplify it even more to, I do what, and then in parentheses, do what for, in parentheses, who, because, in parentheses, why. So eventually we drop the competitive set just because that's kind of for our own knowledge. And we can simplify it in that other easy sentence too. All right, next slide. All right, now here's a litmus test. So as Joanna tells you all about how to craft those compelling stories, here's how you can test out if they're really speaking to your ideal customer. So in the minds of your ideal customer, you always want to say, I want, and then can you finish the sentence successfully? So on the right, I have different pictures of a Mercedes-Benz that show things like vacations, luxury, and aspirational, groundbreaking, just like you type messages, right? So I want luxurious vacations. I want people to see me with respect. I want a luxury car to show people whatever, right? That's kind of what these ads on the right make you think or say. On the left, this shows a high performance engine, okay? How many people that are buying the Mercedes-Benz are going to lead with the high performance engine, right? That is a feature of the product that is the safety net. So maybe you want to go on luxurious vacations and you want to feel luxurious because you have made it to a point in life where you feel you deserve it and you want the engine to go with it. And we happen to have that too, okay? So again, the difference between the product and the offer. All right, next slide. So now if we bring it all together, back to that transformation and information, again, you want to be groundbreaking. You want to, push back barriers. You want to have that luxurious feeling car, and that engine, that top quality engine, just supports the fact that if you buy that car, you will get the best, most luxurious car that will make you feel amazing, right? And that's really how simple it is to go from information to transformation. I'm going to hand it back to Joanna now so she can tell you the technical aspects of telling these inspirational stories.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was really wonderful. A lot of really great examples. So feel free to put your questions for Vanessa in the chat, and we will take the questions in a little bit. Again, as we're working with our different participants in our competitions or in the different ways that you can use a pitch, we often have participants who are at the very early stage of coming up with an idea, and we have some who are really like leaning forward into building their business. And so what we like to do is provide some of this education so that you can start with where you are. So As Vanessa mentioned, for some of you, the idea of creating a pitch is going to be very simple at this stage. You'll have some requirements, let's say for Little Bang, to do customer calls and to think that through as you're kind of really thinking about your venture and how to potentially test the feasibility of that and decide if you're going to move forward with it. So the pitch actually can have different audiences, but the customer is always going to be really central to what you are presenting about yourself as a team or as a founder, and the pitch that you are making to potentially get investment in your idea to keep it moving. So for instance, if you are pitching in the Little Bang or Big Bang, you'll be in front of a group of judges who are professionals in their fields. They may or may not be familiar with your area of expertise that you're bringing your idea forward in. And so you want to keep that in mind, that you want to speak in language that is going to be really accessible for them. But you also, some things will be sort of consistent throughout. So we're going to focus on some of the elements that are consistent as you're putting together your pitch and your visual elements. So again, as Vanessa mentioned, there are specific guidelines for all of our competitions. And so we want to make sure that you go to the website and that you are following those guidelines, because not following them could result in being disqualified. And we never want that to happen. So we're also available. You can set up a time to talk with us if you are unsure about any of those guidelines. So tip number one is to expect the creative process to be iterative. So, as you're developing your brand, as you're thinking through your pitch and where you are, just know that this whole process is going to be one in which you are in a cycle of getting feedback from your potential customers, from other people who hear what you're working on, and as you continue to do research and development. And that's a really good thing. So go in with the expectation that your ideas and the way you present your ideas are going to continue to evolve. So the next piece is, I really think it's helpful for you to think about how you want to organize all of your information that supports your pitch. So these could be, file structure that you use, databases, or as simple as just your own handwritten notes as you move forward with it. And then recognize that the actual pitch and the competition elements that you're going to submit are separate, and you want to take the time to polish those no matter where you are in your development cycle with your idea or your venture. So we'll talk about how to really make sure that those are clear, succinct, and compelling. Definitely the storytelling around your customer is going to be very important for that. And then also many of us have different strengths in terms of verbal presentation versus creating something that's visually compelling. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you want those to create a cohesive story that the person listening to can really understand what your offer is and how the customer will be served by that. All right, so tip number 3, we mentioned it already, but we like to do it a few times, which is review the competition guidelines. Or if you're going into a different situation, perhaps you think that you're meeting with a potential funder, get as much information as you can ahead of time to make sure that your pitch is aligned with what they are there to hear and what they're looking for from you. And again, practice as much as possible. I think that gives you the chance to hear from other people if they have questions or if anything is unclear. So as Vanessa mentioned, in this messaging, there are many ways that we can dial this down to a very succinct statement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But using our own competitions as a reference point, they're going to be varying lengths at times, and they're going to be different elements that you're allowed to include with them. So if you're looking at Little Bang and you've already registered for that next week, we'll have the competition. It's a 90-second pitch, which is very short. So you really want to be concise, and you have a poster that goes with it. So some of the information will be conveyed visually through your poster and doesn't need to be part of your pitch. As you proceed through the Big Bang, we have varying elements that you'll be incorporating these ideas with, from a 2-minute video pitch to then pitching in front of our judges. If you make it to the final round, you'll have a longer pitch along with a slide deck. And so again, using these principles depending on what the circumstances are. So here's the pitch framework. I believe it says this is the same one that you summarized for us, or is it a little bit different? It's sort of how we teach it at the Institute, with a kind of simple statement. And it's one of the ways that you can make sure that you're including various elements as you are presenting your venture. So when you're doing this, again, that iterative process, you're going to want to think about what are the words that you're using, and also the flow of your pitch. How are you presenting the information in a way that the important elements stand out, and that it feels just very authentic to you, and compelling to the people who are listening. So we talk about descriptive words evoking emotion. This is one of the ways that you can really tap into and make your pitch memorable or sticky, as Vanessa said. You can take some of the words that you might use in everyday life and think about, if you're adding words like very or highly, what's the next progression of that word to be more powerful, and go straight for that. And again, this is where practicing and gaining feedback from people, asking specifically to hear some challenging elements from people, or to get feedback about how you can improve, is really important. And so when you're presenting as well, you'll want to really think about your voice and the tone that you're using. So we talk about projection if you're doing this either on video or in a room, really practicing. So projection is not just about increasing the volume of your voice, but it's really about aiming it to reach the people even in the furthest areas of the room, so that they can hear your pitch just as well as the people who are sitting right in front of you. And then tone of voice. So naturally, you'll notice that there's going to be some rhythms and some inflection, but this is also a great opportunity to practice this and to think about where you want to put emphasis on certain words or certain ideas. And, making sure that when you were talking, I think many of us have heard some older presentation advice, right, of just being very, very confident and dominant, but depending on the story that you're telling, that may not fit all the way through your pitch, right? So you want to be aware of, are you describing a serious problem where you want to be reflecting that in your tone of voice? Or is it uplifting? Is it lighthearted? Noticing those elements as you practice are going to be really important. And then body language. So this is a really great place to practice as well. Being aware of how you're interacting and presenting yourself when you're doing your pitch. You can, again, learn through practice. You can videotape yourself and just be mindful and play with it. I think this is a good opportunity to try it out. So body language is a really important part of what you are communicating to your audience. And again, watching great presenters, whether that's through TED Talks or through other people who you see speaking at different events, can really give you some insight into things that you might want to try for yourself. And then dressing appropriately for the situation. So I'm sure we've all seen sort of in movies or images of people who are doing a startup pitch, let's say on the fly at a coffee shop in Silicon Valley, right? So that might be a suitable in that situation, or it might be that you are going to be in front of a group of professionals and you want to be more dressed up and create a cohesive look with your team members. All of those things are great to practice and to check out and as you're giving your speech, giving your pitch to different people. And then, of course, I like including this element too, which is just noticing, what do you do when you are nervous? So you can definitely just do this by noticing yourself, again, by videotaping or getting feedback. So noticing it and then practicing grounding. So breathing exercises, getting more comfortable in different situations of doing your pitch. Whatever you can do, notice what you do with your hands, with your mouth, with your feet, and start to deliberately put intention around how you'd like to shift that for yourself when you're pitching, especially if you have a team, recognizing where various people might have certain strengths in delivering the pitch can be really helpful. And then, of course, we've talked about aligning your pitch with your visuals. So this is a great place. So we always recommend, if you are not strong in graphics, forming a team, or as you move forward, hiring somebody who can do graphic design for you. Working with different capabilities is really great. And then, of course, making sure that those elements really align. So as you're creating your brand, you want to make sure that those elements are not just clear and descriptive, but that they also match. Perhaps there's a color palette that makes sense for what you are offering, or there's a certain font or a look that you want to dive deeper into. This opportunity through these competitions and elsewhere a great chance to play with that, and know that it's going to continue to evolve as you move forward and get additional feedback. So clarity and understanding, you want the graphics to be simple enough that somebody can take in the information and work with that. You want them to stand out. When you have complex data, as often happens with pitching a venture, you want to make sure that it is presented as clearly as possible. And also, I would say accuracy is very important. That's a question that often comes up when I hear judges talk about how to evaluate a pitch. Sometimes we need to be speculative with our progressions of our ventures, but what you want to do is make sure that you're able to cite your sources and explain what you know and then what you are planning to get in terms of additional information. And then really thinking about how to tell your story. So you as the founder, you as a team are a part of this pitch. So we often say that when people are hearing your pitch, they're listening to your business idea and the offer to the customer, but they're also looking to understand how can you and your team uniquely move this forward. So really thinking about that. And that comes into play in terms of your bios and the other pieces that you're going to be working on that share information, definitely as you move into things like websites, building your brand through social media. What information can you provide about yourself that helps others understand why you're uniquely positioned to move this forward? And really thinking critically about what information maybe doesn't fit with this. I found quite a bit that understanding what your professional interests are, having photos and graphics that represent you is really important. And then we always like to tell people as they are building their social media presence for their venture or their website, please feel free to connect with us and tag us. It's a great way that we can see what you're doing outside of the competition space, and you are part of a wonderful network. And so that brings me to the end of our PowerPoints. I'm going to stop sharing and we will take some questions and open up the floor for some discussion. So I'm going to ask Nikki to guide us through if there are any questions that are ready, and if not, you can raise your hand or come on camera so that we know that you are ready to ask some questions.
Okay, I'm looking in the chat, and so far there are no questions that have been posed.
Right. We
So
love questions around here.
Piggybacking off of the ChatGPT info in the chat, I always like to give a go to my own pitch when I'm using tools like ChatGPT as a draft. But one thing ChatGPT is really good at too, in addition to all these other great tips, is going back to what you said about words and having a word like very, VERY, become more specific. You can actually, I always ask ChatGPT to rewrite whatever it is. And then I say, if the word can have more than one meaning or a varying meaning, VARYING meaning, please rewrite the word to a more specific or concrete word. And you get such rich text back.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. And Vanessa, what that brings up for me is just a reminder to everybody about all the tools that are now available. Things like Canva. If you're just starting out and you know you're not ready to do a deep dive into how do I create some visuals that go with this, there are wonderful tools these days that you can use that will help you put these ideas and concepts together.
Canva is one of my favorites. Also, there's this logo making tool called Looka.ai.
That's great.
LOOKA.ai. And so Canva, you can find logo templates and you can make them your own, right? Looka.ai is, if you're not so artistic, you can answer like 4 or 5 questions about your business, and then it'll generate 4 to 5 choices for you. I actually like to use Looka and Canva in partnership because Looka kind of gets the ideas flowing, and then Canva, you can make it your own.
That's great. Great advice. So Vanessa, what have you noticed in either great companies? You shared some wonderful examples already, but things that maybe even were surprised to you or just really like stuck with you and how they presented their story effectively?
I think, well, let me try to think of a good specific example for you. But one thing that always resonates with me is when I go to create content for any brand is I think back to something that I did 5 years ago. And I think back to the specific elements that I remember about the experience. And then I think about why, and I think about what the brands may have done to help me remember, right? And so that really helps, I think, tease the creativity. As far as storytelling goes, well, I just got done teaching a case about Barbie in my branding class. And I think one thing that we have the capability to do on a poster or a video is like showing to help tell, right? And so Barbie had a failed rebrand in 2015 because they created all these products that were very inclusive, but they didn't create a story around it. And in 2023, when the movie came out, or 22 at this point, when the movie came out, what Barbie did was they said why the founder created Barbie. They reminded us that Barbie is for everyone. And then they had all these images of different types of Barbies in the movie. And so it took the current customer that maybe likes traditional Barbie. There was still a place for that person, but there was a place for a lot of other people too. And the ideal customer could see themselves within that story. So anytime you can really take the customer along, and of course we all don't have the liberty of making a movie about our products, but what Barbie did was they took their customer along with them, right? And so what is that story again that your customer is going through? Stories are made up of a few elements. They're made up of the problem, the main character having a problem. Your company is the guide that's going to help them. And then the customer might go through, some setbacks, but eventually they will have success, right? I mean, that is a basic story. And again, the story is driven by that customer problem and your help with the problem. But again, in the end, the customer is solving their own problem with you and your solution as that guide to them, because it's their transformation. And that's why Barbie was so powerful, right? Like, Barbie, you see all these things that you can be in the way they presented it.
That's great. I love that. And I love really thinking about yourself as the guide. It helps really position like where you are in that storytelling. What else would you suggest if somebody is really trying to understand how the customer fits into their thinking about what they are going to offer? I mean, we talk about it's just really important. The number one thing is to be out there talking with people who could be your customers, right? That those conversations, formally and informally, as you talked about as well. What do you think is important to keep in mind for those who are maybe newer on their journey? Looks like we might have a frozen screen. Okay. I would also invite anybody who is interested in pitching, either through the Institute or other organizations to pop on and let us know. What are you thinking about? What are you interested in pitching? And what questions are you coming up with? What are you running into that maybe feels a little intimidating or that you're nervous about? And use this opportunity to share what your thoughts are and what you're working through. Okay, and I think Vanessa will rejoin us in a minute.
Oh, hey, Joanna. I do.
Hi, Steve. Welcome.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for everyone's time and just doing this workshop. So one of the things that I saw in the previous contestants in the posters is that some posters were actually just very big visuals, while the other posters had a lot of bullet points.
Yeah.
Just hearing from the workshop today, my preference and my take on a good poster is something that it's a 90-second pitch. So I personally don't think it should have that many bullet points. I personally think that what is on the poster should be what is mentioned during the 90 seconds. which means that it's not going to be a lot of talking points available. So yeah, I was wondering, what everyone's take on that would be. I believe that it would be different for everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know what, you bring up a couple of really great points, so I can start and then I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts about that. And this is one of the biggest questions that comes up, let's say in Little Big, is I think everybody is often we have very new to pitching folks who are trying it out. And so I agree with you. I think it's really important that your poster be visually engaging without being overwhelming, and that kind of thing. And truly, if you have gone through your process and you have your information, you're able to build that into some of those main points more easily. I think that it is a little bit more challenging for those who are newer to it because you want to demonstrate that you've done this work, right? And so a lot of times it's maybe our own impulse to show that we've done the work and that we're thinking through it. And we're thinking about it from that perspective and not necessarily from a judge's perspective and what would they need to see. And that's where doing that. What I like to say though, also for our competitions and for a lot of things that happen here on campus is this is a great place to try it out. So come and we do a feedback round before the competition. We do the pitches. You'll have lots of people there. And show it to as many people as you can so that as you start to get more familiar, you'll get a sense of what it is that should be communicated on the poster. And the nice thing is if you progress through different competitions, often you'll have slides and you might have an appendix slide, somewhere off for yourself if you're in a different situation, somebody's asking you questions, right, where you can refer to it. But it really is this learning process. And that's what we emphasize, which is do your best when you have your product at this moment in time, meaning your poster and your pitch, but know that it's going to continue to evolve and kind of become more seamless. We see such amazing progression from with students and others who from the beginning of the year when maybe they have an idea and then they're starting to put it together and they're getting feedback and they're getting mentoring and they're having these experiences to where they end up often, years down the line, either continuing to work on their idea or shifting and using those skills somewhere else. So I think it's about finding that balance that you feel comfortable with. Other thoughts on that question? It was an excellent question. Thank you.
I am back. I did not hear the question.
Oh, I could repeat it.
Our internet timed out over here, so we're sorry.
No
Oh
problem.
yeah, I could repeat it. And it's essentially, I see these previous contestants' posters on the web, and I see a lot of various types of posters where one poster is very just visually, big pictures and big ideas, while other posters have a lot of bullet points, kind of like a research paper. Personally, for me, I thought that, for the formatting of this competition being a 90-second pitch, I should only include big items and things that are the most important as a visual on the poster, and kind of omit and avoid other types of back research that you've done that judges and spectators won't be able to read anyways. And that was my take on it, but I also just wanted to hear everyone's feedback on that.
I really appreciate that too. I will also say, I think part of it too is we encourage people to take a project that they're doing in a class and bring it in, or for lots of students who are interested in research, you might be used to a research poster that has a lot of information in it. And we're making that transition into more of the business side of things and how do you present things. And so this is really great in terms of figuring out. And again, I recommend definitely looking at the guidelines to make sure that you include on the poster anything that is required. I know, for instance, we require you to do customer calls summaries, and that gets submitted separately. And the idea then is your poster and your pitch should incorporate what you've learned through those customer calls, right? So it's not a representation of those customer calls on your poster. It's the idea that you are doing work in the background, and then you are then thinking about how can I communicate this best? How can I create that story? Which is a combination of statistics, data, as well as, the customer journey and, even your own story of why it's really important to you to solve this problem, or how you can do that in a unique way. Great question. So what other questions do we have coming up? I see a couple in chat. Nikki, do you want to read us one question to respond?
Yes. So we have one that says, how long should your pitch deck be?
Okay, great question. So I'm assuming that's a question for Big Bang, is that right? I can answer it more generally. So yes, thank you. So we do, we work with folks in different ways. I mean, I think there's a really great example, and Nikki, you can let me know if this is on the website, but we tend to have templates, and we're aiming for, generally you want like 10 slides or less. But I've been involved with a lot of different competitions, and I can tell you that the numbers are often very, very different, right? Depending on what the type of competition is and what they are requiring you to show when you do that. And so, you want to look at whatever competition you're involved in or what situations you're involved with. But we should have the template. And thank you, Nikki just put that in the chat. So you can take a look at that in terms of some of the things that we require. There are some very common things, right? We talk about how to break down the various elements that help you present the information, as well as tell the story of your team. So, Vanessa, do you have any thoughts about what a good slide deck might be, and how do you make those? I would say the big question is, how do you make those succinct when there is so much information that you might want to share?
I like the concept of using an appendix in a slide deck, especially if you distribute those slides later, because then you can say, here's the research that went into this. This is the main point. And you can refer to the appendix for more. So I don't know the format, if there is a format. I know at one point you all had a 10 pitch deck, a 10 slide pitch deck. So I don't know what your formatting concerns are, but what I always tell my students is, if you're going to submit slides to whoever you're presenting to, just include an appendix. And then on everything that you are putting, even every sentence of your pitch, I think saying like, why do they care, in terms of your target audience, is such a good practice, because it really trims the fat, why do they care about a detail of your story that doesn't directly inform them of why you formed this concept for a business, right? And there's a lot of ways to tell great stories within that, but asking why do they care is a great way to stay on track. And then don't leave out the because. So a lot of times we do these beautiful pitches and pitch decks, and we say, well, there's 35 other crackers out there, but my cracker is the only one that has this kind of salt. I don't actually care, because your cracker being the only one that has this kind of salt is not why a consumer is going to buy it. It's not why it's going to become a visible or a viable business. And so what you want to say is, you want to add the because. My cracker is the only one that has this kind of salt, and that's important because it is processed differently in the body of someone who might have high blood pressure, and then blah, 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 right? And so we have to include that because if there's 1,000 crackers on the market that haven't worked, and the salt is the special thing, you need to tell them why, right? So again, don't leave out the because that's one thing we tend to leave out too much. And then don't add too much of the floof by forgetting to ask, why don't they care? This goes along with the question you were asking when our internet timed out, when you said, how do you make sure you really stay in the realm of what the customer wants?
Mm-hmm.
Constantly, as a business owner, you need to just know that you're wrong. You have a blind spot, right? So in my car, I have this light that flashes in my rearview mirror every time I change lanes to warn me if a car is in my blind spot or not, right? I always assume I need to look at that light. I always assume there might be a car in my blind spot, right? So I need to be aware of that light when I'm changing lanes to know, right? Also my rearview mirror, but it's 2025, so we have cool tools. So always when you go to make your message, when you're thinking these things through, think, what am I missing that the customer needs, right? And if you're always asking if you're always saying, what am I missing that the customer needs? If you're trying to put what you're saying in a sentence that says, I want, in the guise of the customer, right? If you're saying the because, and then if you're saying, why do they care? You know, it's really hard then to get off track, I think.
And I think that's really helpful. I'll just add too, you know, what's great about the way we design our competitions is it's really about the educational process. So you will progress through from the very first deliverable in Big Bang is your executive summary and your bios, right? And so when you move forward in the competition, we also provide that guidance about what the next steps are. So by the time that you're developing your pitch deck, which is further along if you're advancing in the competition, you'll have a lot of mentoring that you've received and support to know how to put that together and what elements are needed. And I think that's really helpful. I see another question, which is a great one, which is, are there common mistakes students make during their pitch that someone should avoid? And I'm gonna flip that on its head and say, you should make lots of mistakes when you do your pitch because that is the best way to learn, and that's what we're here for. But we do see what I would call differences in approaches, right? And so the number one thing that I think is helpful is to practice as much as possible and get feedback and get comfortable for yourself. So if you don't have time for that and you're entering in a competition with us or you just want to practice, that's okay. That's what, you know, that's what this is all about, is an opportunity to do that. The best way that you can learn is by doing. I would say the second piece is not thinking about this from the audience's perspective. So we often start out from our own perspective and, you know, this is what I want, or this is what I'm doing. And so taking the time to really talk through and think about how would your customer hear this pitch? How would people who might make buying decisions for your customer or other people who might, if I were going to invest in it, what's the information that I need to hear to feel moved by your story and to take action on it? Really, you're offering a pitch as a call to action. And so thinking about it from that perspective is really going to be helpful, I think. And we've been asking that question, you know, when you're practicing either on your own during feedback rounds and saying, what did you hear that is compelling? What have you not heard that's compelling, right? And then just recognize that you can't fit a lot of information into a 90-second pitch, let's say, if it's a little big, but you're generating interest by presenting enough credible information and the hook, the story, that they want to learn more about it. And so don't try to do too much, try to do what you can within the time and where you are in your process, and know that you'll have lots of opportunities to keep going if you want to. All right, what other questions? We have a few more minutes. It's a great chance to test things out if anybody has a pitch that they'd like to try, or if they are working through any other questions, this is great. We do have office hours that Jasmine is offering for Little Big. It's next week. So we're coming up here very close. And then for Big Bang, Nikki's available to answer more questions about entering that competition. And we're happy to share more examples of things we've heard. Again, I think that some of the, you know, I like that practice of thinking about what has made some of these really memorable. And I will say sometimes the thing that makes it most memorable is the poster element. Sometimes it's the pitch, or it's really like how that person made you feel when they were communicating about their venture and what problem they're trying to solve. So everybody has different strengths that come out during this process, and you want to continue to lean into those, but also just take it as an opportunity to keep building new skills and to try things out without taking it too seriously for yourself, because you really want to be in that learning mode as you're doing this. All right. Well, I think Vanessa and I will be here for a couple more minutes. Okay. Is there a breakdown of scoring for posters versus pitches? Yeah. So the judges have a rubric. That's a great question. The judges have a rubric for how they are evaluating each of those submissions for Little Bang, and also when it gets to Big Bang, they have a rubric that they use for that. What I can tell you, because I do not influence the judging, we are here to administer it, but I spend a lot of time with the judges. What I would say is that there's a breakdown that accounts for the thinking work and the call summaries that you've done, right? So making sure that those are reflected in your poster and in your pitch is going to be important. So that's an important element of what gets broken down into that. And then definitely how you do in terms of communicating that verbally during your pitch and with your poster. So I'm not going to give the exact breakdown, but I would say that all of them are important. And we often see that the people who win awards across the board, none of them are consistently strong in the same areas. So the way that the scoring works is that you can be especially strong on a particular piece and somebody else is stronger on a different piece, and you may still be able to win an award and regardless move on, you know, enter into Big Bang and have that learning experience and move through that competition as well. So those are my thoughts on that piece. Ali, do you have a question?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I came a little bit late, so I
Right.
was in San Francisco about as well. So the question that I had was, do I need, like my product to be viable? Like, do I have a product to enter the question?
I'm sorry. I think that the audio is breaking up a little bit. Can you try again?
Do I need a product? Let's say, for example, I'm trying to make a platform. Do I need to have that platform ready by the time we go into the competition?
So I'm having trouble hearing. You might want to type into chat your question, or if Nikki, if you were able to hear it, or Vanessa, on my end, it's coming through a little garbled.
It's definitely garbled. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why.
Great. Great question. Thank you. That's an excellent question. No, you don't. In fact, so as we mentioned, we will often see that people are very early stage, still even with Big Bang, with their idea. So you need to be at the stage where you can communicate about it through the executive summary, what your idea is, and then we have requirements for you over the next couple of months, where you'll be talking to your customers and continuing to do your research and build that slide deck. So you definitely do not have to have an actual prototype of the product that you have in mind, although some teams do. It really depends on where they are in their own process. I think that it's a really great opportunity to work through what that product would look like, but it's also many folks are using this as an opportunity to gain experience and to get feedback to develop their product, or even to look at this as an opportunity to really fine tune the ideas before they invest capital into creating a product. So you definitely do not have to have a business that's already ready to be launched or anything like that. There are many who are sort of pre-stage.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great question. Anyone else would like to ask a question? Okay, for the poster, should I focus more on data, storytelling, or visual elements? Really great question. I'm going to say all three. I think this is where it can be great to partner with somebody or to really make sure that you're showing this to people who have a different approach. So for instance, I might not be very personally aligned around data, but I will find people who I know really look to data to help establish the credibility of an idea, the background about why that problem is significant, and I will make sure that they're looking at it with me and giving me some ideas of what could be really useful. The visual elements are going to be important, but I always say, you know, if you need to, keep it simple. So I think maybe one of the trouble spots could be if you are spending too much time on the design of it to try to make it visually appealing beyond what is needed to communicate the actual idea. If you're spending a lot of time on that, that's probably not going to give you enough sort of ROI. What you really want to do is think about, we'd mentioned Canva. Can I have a simple template that helps me to visually communicate my idea? And but know that given limited time, where I really want to spend the time is thinking through my idea and testing it out by talking with customers and getting that input. So you're going to want to balance your time with that. But again, I might partner with somebody who is, you know, on the design side of things, who really enjoys doing some graphic design or can really look at it and has a good sense of visually like what is overwhelming or what is really helpful for people who are looking at that. And the storytelling, again, I think where you want to spend your time is knowing your story, like knowing what is important to the customer and how you can offer something that's of value to them. And whether that comes out in which should certainly come out in your pitch, but also on your poster. I think, you know, just getting yourself to that point where you're comfortable with your story and then knowing that you'll continue to build that out. Whether it's through a poster or additional visuals at a different time. I really have seen, I think I can reassure you, I've seen folks where the poster wasn't their strength. The pitch was really, really compelling and the idea was really strong. And I've seen other combinations that have helped them at this stage to move forward. And then you're really going to be working with mentors and people who give you feedback to help you develop further. Examples of past winning pitches or posters. Yes, so we don't share too many just because we want you to come in and be creative and fresh, but we do have a couple that we can kind of share within the context of information that's available to the public. So when we send out the link to the recording, which we always do, we will also share a couple of places where you can take a look at some different ideas and some different visual representations and pitches that people have done. Any tips on how to find advisors? That's a great question. Well, I definitely recommend coming to as many events as you can. Again, there's a great network here at UC Davis and in our regional community of people who are interested in providing their insight, asking you questions to help you develop your ideas. Getting to know them. We are big proponents of interdisciplinary collaboration and that mentoring relationships. You can learn a lot by people who are not just in your own field, but who are in different fields, can bring a different perspective to it. You can also send an email to either Nikki or Jasmine, and they'll be happy to help you understand like where along the process you're going to be able to get some people in your network who can be mentors or advisors. I certainly think that coming to Little Bang, it's a really great opportunity to interact with people and see a variety of ideas. So we do practice feedback round before we actually do the pitches. So you'll get to see everybody's posters and talk with them, get to know who they might be working with in their areas. And then we do a lot of work around building your network. And so we're happy to talk with you at any time. Just give us an email and we can sit down with you and understand what your goal is and what you're trying to achieve and talk about that some more. Great. Okay.
Quick question. Sorry, this is Mikkel. I just joined because I couldn't get it beforehand, but I just went to the Little Bang website. So I'm, there's a deadline. What's the deadline for tomorrow?
Yeah, unfortunately, fortunately, we received a great number of responses. So we had to close it early because we reached our capacity. So I'm sorry to say that because
Okay.
we like to encourage everybody to participate. So if you haven't been able to make it in through that deadline, I would still really encourage you to come on next Thursday, the 13th, and get to know some of the teams that'll be there. It's a great chance to see pitches, right? To think about your own opportunity. You can also, during the network portions, talk about your own ideas and what you're working on. And then we do have the deadline for Big Bang still coming up, and Nikki can put that in chat so you have that. So if you missed out on this chance to compete in Little Bang this year, it's definitely one of our popular programs, and we want to continue to offer that, as well as encourage you to really think about putting your hat in the ring with Big Bang, because you'll receive some great opportunities through that. Right, and March 3rd is
Okay.
the deadline. Nikki just put in Slack. And with, I will say with Big Bang for the round one, we don't have a capacity, we don't have a limit that we will cut it off and close it early. But that deadline is really important because it's your only chance to participate in the competition. So the folks who continue on in the advanced rounds have to make it in by that March 3rd deadline with their initial deliverables in order to move forward. So it's a really important date.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad that you have that interest. We definitely will also, I would say if you sign up on our mailing list or follow us on social, we have additional events coming up that are a great way to get to know people in the various fields and get to know our team as well. And just finding new opportunities. I believe we also, I believe there's room still in our UC Entrepreneurship Academy Foundations program. And Nikki, do you want to come on and talk about that a little bit? I think we're still accepting applicants for that. That's another great space to learn how to kind of develop and vet your idea. And Nikki, what is the information for that?
I'm pulling it up right now. Give me one
Sorry
moment.
to put you on the spot.
Not
But,
a problem.
That's another great, you'll have that chance to meet other folks who are developing ideas and really interested in understanding how they can move forward. And again, I've offered this, but we're all very happy to talk with you about your idea and put you in touch with people that are a part of our network and, you know, can be activities.
Oh, sorry, I
Yes,
just
so
realized I
yeah.
wasn't muted.
Great.
That's great. So the foundations course is generally, the Entrepreneurship Academy is generally a 4-day intensive that we offer. This time on March 7th, which is a Friday, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Gallagher Hall, we'll be doing the foundations course, which means we're taking all the components from the 4-day extensive and putting them together into a foundations course. So most of the essential elements will be present in that particular session. It will be taught by Joe D'Annunzio, who's our executive director. Andrew Hargadon, our faculty director, will also be teaching a session, which is really awesome. And then we'll end with a networking lunch. So everyone present at that course can have a nice lunch and network together and talk about what they learned. So that's a really good opportunity, especially if you've entered the Big Bang. Since March 3rd is that initial deadline, it will give you some foundational work and some framework to use as you move forward to the next deadline for round 2. And then also I want to mention that we're offering mentorship this year along with Big Bang in a way that will allow you to reach out to mentors in our network who can really offer you the skills and expertise that you're looking for based on your own particular venture.
Thank you, Nikki. That's great. Really helpful. We'll just take a minute to talk about a couple of other programs. We have our fellowship for undergraduates. We are accepting applications for that. That's a career readiness, especially for people who are interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. We do a lot of great work together thinking about how you can prepare for yourself, either typically through an internship that you would like to complete within the next year or so. So the spring quarter is accepting applications right now for that. And then we have some great speakers coming up as well. So we'll have events, and we find that a lot of our community that's interested in innovation and entrepreneurship comes out to attend those. And so those are available through our website and Startup Tree. And we want to continue to bring those opportunities to you. So last call, if there are any other questions for Vanessa or me or the team.
Thank you for all the resources.
Yes, definitely. And feel free to reach out, like we said, via email or however to ask additional questions and make use of the resources.
And Ali, to answer your question, I have advisors on my side, but that's just because I talk to everybody.
That's great.
And
That's a really good
eventually I
skill.
found people that just said like, huh, yeah, I'd like to help with that. Let me know how I can help. And I take them up on it. Oh, okay, let's meet on how you can help. And that's how I got two people to say, yeah, we can be an advisor. But then you do have to give away some of your company to do that. So, but that should be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people are happy to help. Could you share a little bit more? Because I think that's a really great perspective. It sounds like you're really comfortable talking to people about your idea. How did you get comfortable? Was it a learning process, or do you feel like it's something that you're just excited about your ideas?
I got old was one. I'm 39 and I've gone through the ringer of work and career, and I never thought entrepreneurship was for me. And then this idea to automate this workflow within the events industry that I work in just like hit me like a ton of bricks, and it has not left my brain since. So
That's
yeah, I'm very excited about the idea, and it brought me to, but I wasn't sure about myself. I'm not a natural CEO type. Um, I would prefer just to work at a company and just do well and just be on my way and take care of my family. But man, it's hit me so hard that if the calling's there. So therefore, I feel like, yeah, just to go and I've already had a network of people that I met
Mhm.
through my life, and those people are just the ones that yeah, we can keep talking with you about this.
That's great.
It just honestly is experience. I mean, who makes the best teachers? Is it ones who like immediately graduate school and then immediately go into teaching, or is it really experienced older teachers that you know are usually sometimes the best ones because they've just gone through that. So for me, it's just it's come later, and I've gotten through enough experience to know what I don't want and what I do want. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, so I'm like, and I'm at a point now where this could happen and it could not happen. I'm good either way, but I'm convinced that it should, but I'm not going to be heartbroken if it doesn't at the same time.
Yeah. Sounds like you're willing to learn some really valuable skills along the way too, which is great. And that's what it's all about, right? Is creating this community to test out your ideas and to see where it goes.
Yeah, that's why all this is new. I went to the Folsom AI startup last night,
Uh-huh.
and it was my first forte into a startup meetup group, and I was immediately inspired and connected, and I got people's numbers and people who want to talk, and like boom, like I am plugged into the startup community. And then they told me about this, and then I found other SAC things, and now you're pointing me to other news sources, and I want to check out that foundation on Friday. So yeah, I'm gonna be all over it now. So I do think you kind of have to determine if you are all in or all out. And so I have a child, and so it's hard to be all in without realizing you have to really manage your time. And I have a full-time job, and so I have to manage my time extremely carefully.
Yeah, I think we all have those choices and stuff. I would make a bid for those who are cautiously interested in entrepreneurship. There's space for you too, right? It's really about exposure and about stretching yourself slightly outside of your comfort zone. It sounds like you've done that already and really been inspired. And just hearing you, I think, is really inspiring for others who are thinking about this, right? We really like the idea of building your network, but also partnerships, whether it's to keep our energy up while we continue to work on our ideas, or that's somebody who has a different perspective that can challenge you. It's really important to be part of that network. So that's
Yeah, absolutely. Being in person really is the best thing you can do, and talking and telling people about your ideas. It's a number. So I've been in sales. It's everything's a numbers game. You talk to 100 people, 5 people may actually be interested in what you're doing, and one person may actually want to meet with you regularly on on. And now I have a childhood friend that I also ran into recently. He's also has his own small startup business happening that he's working, and so now him and I are meeting on a weekly basis just to chat about it. And so of going to these gatherings and people like yourselves that are actually putting them on for me to go to. I honestly, I didn't think it was in Sacramento. I was in the Bay Area for a long time and I didn't know what the scene was like in Sacramento. So now it's nice to see that there is a community here that I feel I can get plugged into. So anyway, I'll stop ranting, but thank you.
Yeah, though I think that's a great reminder to everybody. And I think this is a really supportive community. So when we hear about events, we want to help make sure that you hear about them too and encourage you to use all of those great resources. All right. Any last questions? We are here. We'll go ahead and stop recording. I'll stay on with Nikki for the last couple of minutes if anybody has a question that they don't want to ask.